All right, welcome to another episode of Tom Kennedy Science, where we explore the universe. And today we are going to explore how all cells are similar based on their single origins. I know, think about this, right? All life, all life, from the simplest of bacteria to humans, they're made of cells, right? Everything is made of cells. And we share a common ancestry dating back billions of years. And in this image, I've got a really cool dragonfly. And dragonflies, like all other animals, are made of cells, billions of cells. And a cool thing about dragonflies, they are the world's most efficient predators, even more than a cheetah. Cheetahs have like a 50% capture rate. These guys, 90 to 95%. They are amazing. All right. So in biology, there's cell theory. And basically, cell theory is quite simple. Cells are the basic unit of life. They are the smallest unit where all of those features, all of those things that life does emerges. And we've talked about what life is, and it's pretty complicated, but life emerges at the cell. So all life is cellular, whether you're a single-celled organism or a complex animal like a human, a whale, or an elephant. And in this image, this is from Cerodontus. It's the cloud rainforest in Costa Rica. And everything, all the life in there is, of course, cellular. And I often wonder, how many undescribed species are in that photograph, right? There's just so much life there. It's amazing. All right. So if cells are the basic unit of life, then all cells come from pre-existing cells, or at least in today's world. Now, if you go back to the origins of life, abiogenesis, somewhere, I don't know, 4.2 to 3.8 billion years ago, of course, life emerged when geochemistry transitioned to biochemistry. But once life got started, it's been going ever since. And these cells have been reproducing. The first cells all reproduced by binary fission in prokaryotes. Later along, the eukaryotes evolved and they reproduced by mitosis and meiosis. And we'll get to that in another lecture. Now, all cells come from pre-existing cells. What that means is profound, right? That means you represent the end product of an unbroken lineage going back to the first cells 3.8, 4.2 billions of years ago. So yeah, your great, 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 I don't know, add billions of greats in there, ancestors were cells living in an ancient ocean billions of years ago. I always find that so fascinating. So the origins of life, life started basically as simply as it could because it had to. And on our most recent findings in the last few decades, we predict that life probably started in something like an alkaline vent. And an alkaline vent, these are geological features where you get warm, mineral-rich water moving through these geological features that last thousands of years. And there's tiny little reaction chambers in there that we think help concentrate, the geochemistry building up into some biochemistry. We don't know exactly how geochemistry transitioned to biochemistry. We don't know, but we think it may have happened in an alkaline vent like this one here in the Lost City, which is found in the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean near the Atlantic Ridge. Now, life. Yeah, the first cells, they were prokaryotes. And these, of course, are the bacteria and the archaea. These cells are structurally simple compared to the eukaryotes that make up plants, animals, and fungus. Now, because they were the first cells, and because they are structurally simple, you may hear that they are primitive. Don't call them primitive. They've been evolving ever since the dawn of life, and in some cases, they can evolve quite rapidly, and some of them are highly evolved to live in very specific environments. And the first confirmed life are fossils of these stromatolites, and these are about 3.8 billion years ago. And the Earth was a really different place back then. The atmosphere was mostly carbon dioxide, water vapor, methane, maybe some ammonia, nitrogen, and almost no oxygen. And the continents didn't even get to their original size or their size today until, probably 3.5 billion years ago. And this is an artistic picture of what we think the first life may have looked like way back in the Archean. And surprisingly, There are these stromatolites that are still around today, and Shark Bay, Australia has them. There's some in San Salvador in the Bahamas, and they basically look the same as they did 3.8 billion years ago. Now, we're pretty certain that all life today, got started or is at least descended from a single population of cells. So there's a single origin of life that explains their similarities. Now, that's not saying that life didn't get started multiple times on our planet. It could have. We just don't know because there's no evidence of multiple origins, but it could have. But all life today basically comes from what's called LUCA, our last universal common ancestor that was a population of cells, and all bacteria, archaea, and eukaryotes came from that. And this shows a branching tree. It's a little bit more complicated than that. There's been a lot of movement of genes and stuff around between these things. And in fact, archaea and bacteria probably merged to form eukaryotes. So it didn't really branch off so much as it was a merger. So, yeah, but that's eukaryotes. But, all life, we share these common features that that we've been inheriting. So the question is, what do you share in common with bacteria, right? I know, bacteria, so different. Well, first of all, we all have a plasma membrane. Every cell is a system, and that system is surrounded by this membrane that separates the living cell from its outside world. And that membrane is made of a phospholipid bilayer. All right, now, these membranes, they have selective permeability. They are the gatekeepers of what comes in and out of the cells. Now, for those of you that will go on to take microbiology or have an interest in microbiology, just to be clear, the membranes of of bacteria and archaeans are actually pretty different. They're still phospholipids, most of the time phospholipid bilayers and archaeans, but they may have had separate origins of those cell membranes in the archaeans compared to the bacteria. But eukaryotes and bacteria membranes are very similar. We also have inside that membrane a cytoplasm, which has waters, minerals, various chemicals in there. And our cells actually work fairly hard to maintain proper water balance and pH. So even though bacteria, archaeans, and eukaryotes live in very different environments, when you get into the cytoplasm, they're pretty similar in many ways. Okay, all cells. We store information, specifically genetic information, in our DNA. And our DNA is a large polymer, and it's made up of nucleotides. And all life uses the same four nucleotides: adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine. And it's that information that's stored in the DNA that directs all these activities of the cell. And that could be anywhere from growth, reproduction, maintaining homeostasis, or responding to the environment. So there's lots that are happening inside of these cells. Now, I just told you that DNA stores genetic information, and it stores it in a sequence of nucleotides. And those nucleotides store, the sequence of them has information, just like the letters of a word in the right order convey meaning. Now, interestingly, that code of life is the same everywhere, almost everywhere. There's some bacteria that have evolved some ways to evade viruses that have a slightly different genetic code, but basically the genetic code is universal, and you can see it here. The code is made up of these three bases in a row called a codon. Codons code for amino acids. Now, what that means is with a universal genetic code, I can take a protein out of a human, let's say one to make insulin, insert it into a bacteria like E. coli. That E. coli will make insulin. And in fact, we made a genetically modified organism, specifically transgenic organism, E. coli, to make insulin. And the reason why I'll do that is because the genetic code is universal. It's been inherited since the dawn of life. And the same goes for gene expression. If our DNA is storing information to make proteins, well, the way that you make proteins is through a process called gene expression, which includes a two-step, well, it's Okay, two-step, but there's actually more than two steps, and especially in eukaryotic cells, this gets more complicated, but basically it's transcription and translation. Transcription is where you copy the information to make a protein. You copy that from the DNA to something called a messenger RNA, and you use an RNA polymerase to do that. And then that messenger RNA goes to a ribosome where it is translated into a sequence of amino acids, forming a polypeptide that gets folded into a biologically active protein. So we go from DNA to messenger RNA to proteins. And like I said earlier, it's the ribosome that makes proteins. And ribosomes, these are large molecular structures. They're made of proteins and a special type of RNA called ribosomal RNA. And every protein that's ever been made is made inside of a ribosome, inside of a cell. I know, that's amazing, right? Okay, if we've got the same genetic code with these codons coding for amino acids and we're making them in ribosomes, well, then the building blocks of proteins are all the same as well. And in fact, all life uses the same 20 amino acids. Okay, for those of you that are into trivia, yes, there are some bacteria out there that use 22 different types. But for humans, we use 20. And proteins, these are the workhorses of cells. They do so many things. There could be upwards of 1 million different proteins or more in the world. We don't know the full extent of our proteins inside of our bodies. And they're all made with these 20 amino acids. And not only are they all the same 20 amino acids, they are all left-handed, right? All left-handed amino acids. See, organic molecules can be left-handed or right-handed. They're non-superimposable mirror images. See, they're mirror images, but they're not superimposable. You can't put a glove for your right hand on your left hand. It won't fit. So organic molecules have chirality because of very specific enzymes. Okay. Now, and so whether or not you're a bacteria, a plant, a fungus, an animal, you're going to use those same 20 amino acids. All right, it gets better. Okay, we share metabolic pathways with bacteria. One of those is the citric acid cycle, also known as the Krebs cycle, named after Hans Krebs. And if you're in a cell and molecular biology class for majors or taking a biochemistry class, at some point you may actually memorize this Krebs cycle. It's got 8 steps or so, but this cycle in some form is used by basically every living thing on this planet. And in fact, people that study abiogenesis believe that this may be one of the first metabolic pathways of life, right? And it's very important. And this is really important for understanding our aging, cancer, and how we make lots of different things in our body, because it gets better. Not only do we share the citric acid cycle, all in all, in some form or another, life shares around 130 metabolic pathways. And a metabolic pathway is like Krebs cycle or glycolysis. It's a series of chemical reactions carried out by specific enzymes. So if we're sharing 130 sequences of metabolic pathways with all these different chemical reactions, we also share those enzymes that are functioning much in the same way as they have for billions of years. And the citric acid cycle and the glycolysis, those are very important for energy production. And like I said, they're at the heart of cell metabolism and used by all life. So the fact that we share not just, the genetic code, these same 20 amino acid building blocks for all the proteins, but the fact that we share so many of these metabolic pathways, the fact that life would have independently evolved these would be astronomically small, especially considering that the enzymes are very, very similar. It doesn't look like those enzymes had independent evolutions or convergent evolutions. All right. I hope you learned something today about how all life is similar due to our shared ancestry. So until next time, stay curious.